Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thank you so much for checking out the series once again. You know the drill. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. I do 3 interviews every single week, so you get a brand new one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists. And hopefully one of those artists that you're keeping up with are the band. I don't know how, but they found me. I've got Dallon here. How are you, sir?
Keeping those fingers crossed that we're someone's favorite artist besides my mom and grandma.
I don't think that's even a question these days. I mean, congratulations on the success. Congratulations on Razzmatazz.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting too, because we're hearing a lot of music coming out around this time, and it's eerily connecting with stuff that, musicians didn't see coming. But, those old tropes that everybody writes about really becomes spot on in this past year. This record does come across as an album about not being able to connect with someone. We know what that means now. What did it mean then for you when you were writing it?
Well, the past decade or so, before I moved back home to Salt Lake City, I was living in LA and being a musician out there. And I was just sort of orbiting this weird world of fame and celebrity and money, not really being a part of it, but just kind of being around it and observing a lot of it. But the feeling of really not being welcome there it can be a very isolating feeling. So a lot of the songs on this record have to do with that feeling of isolation and frustration and loneliness and anger and all of those feelings that come with sort of being on the outside looking in, I guess.
Yeah. But to a certain degree, just because of chance releasing this record, even as you look back 5 years from now, it almost does become, the pandemic record in a little way.
Yeah, it's sort of born out of necessity, I guess. I mean, even the way that we do the music videos for this thing, it's all about making safety the priority and COVID restrictions and being COVID compliant while we filmed this stuff. So those two things have just sort of become interconnected and married to each other through no through no fault of our own, I guess, but just reflection of the times, I guess.
Do you think that that's had to change whatever creative vision that you might have had in play beforehand, the way you've had to do it?
No, I think it kind of helped actually, because usually art is a reaction to or a reflection of the things that you're experiencing in that moment. And I try not to pre-plan out too many things. Like whether it's the themes of a record or the aesthetics of the artwork afterwards or the visuals of music videos, because I want them to be as current as they can be. So even if I'm singing a song or have a song on the record that I wrote 2 or 3 years ago, I want it to be able to connect with where I'm at right now. So yeah, we make a rough plan, but we leave space for life to find a way, I guess, as Jeff Goldblum would say.
It's interesting though, the way you talk about that too, because there's a lot of present talking to past throughout. I mean, even just the sound of it, I know that's been talked about a lot. The song I know everyone's grabbing onto right now with "Leave Me Alone." I mean, the first time I heard it, I kept looking. It's like, which one is it? Bowie, Fame? Is the DNA in there a little bit?
A little DNA. I sat down. When I wrote that one, I wanted it to sound like if Bowie and Prince and Don Henley got into a bar fight.
Don Henley, that's an interesting third I wouldn't have put in there. Where does that kind of come in?
I don't want to be too specific because I want to stay out of court with the Henley.
Right.
But there's some Henley DNA in there too. You just gotta pick it out.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I are the same age. I think you're a few months ahead of me, but we're both born in 1981. And it's only till recently I've noticed outside of our age that 80s Bowie really became a big thing, because it used to be just trashed on so much. And that was, I mean, to me, I don't know if it's the same way to you, but to me, like that was, like the 80s Bowie was the god of Bowie, Labyrinth probably helping out some in that.
I didn't discover like Ziggy Stardust and anything prior to that until I was in my early 20s, maybe.
Yeah.
Until then, David Bowie was the Goblin King.
Codpiece and all, right?
Codpiece, and especially the codpiece. I think he entered the room codpiece first. you could say.
I'm kind of curious though, because of that, because of what, the era that we're talking about here. Only because my wife and I were talking about, we're kind of line babies as far as generations go. She was born 2 years later, 83. She's like elder statesman of the millennials. Whereas I think
Yeah,
technically we're supposed to be millennials, but I'm totally, I relate Gen X for just about everything. Where do you come in?
yeah, I'm right in that line. I think technically, like I Googled it. I think that's what the kids call it now, is Googling stuff. But I think technically I'm like an ancient millennial, so I'm not quite sure where I fit in. But I grew up. Uh, I grew up in the time we grew up in the time when the MTV generation was happening. Even though we weren't really a part of it, we saw it happen, and it was sort of in our peripheral vision, when we were kids, and that's
Mhm.
how I discovered art and music, and that's how I discovered the Cures by just I happened to be somewhere that had cable TV when I was 12 years old, maybe, or something like that, and saw a music video for the Cure, and I'm like, what is this? I have to know everything. So, back then there was no internet. You had to chase down the things that you loved. You had to go to a record store, find magazines and interviews, and keep your eyes locked on MTV all day long in the hopes that they would play it again at some point. So
Yeah.
finding things, I think, meant a little bit more back then because you had to put in that footwork. It's
Sure,
also
sure.
instantaneous now, so things can come and go very easily, I think.
Well, that's why I appreciate what you're doing, because you've integrated that into this band right here. You didn't make it easy at first for everybody to find it, because I agree with you. I felt a deeper connection, and I'm trying to think. Obviously I am older and things change, but even when I look to younger friends, and I have a son, and that whole thing, it's like it does seem like there was a deeper connection to the artist because you had to try harder. Working that into, I don't know, how about They Found Me, was that intentional?
Yeah, it was very intentional. The first year or so that we spent being a band, we did it in secrecy and would just book shows on our own, not tell anyone what we were doing, and flat out even deny that we existed at all. Once words started getting out about this band, like, is this you, or did you guys play a show here last night? And they would show us pictures and stuff, and we'd have to say, no, no, it's handsome guys, but that could be anybody. I have no idea what you're talking about. But it was our way of trying to build this band from the ground up as honestly and as ethically as we could, because we didn't want to take advantage of the bands that we were working for or their fans. We wanted to be our own thing and have those worlds exist as separately as possible. And that was the challenge for us. So our best way to face that challenge was to do it in secret and invite people to come and find us if you want to find us. We're not going to try to sell it to you. We were not going to say, subscribe to this and follow us here and all the stuff you're supposed to do. We decided to take the opposite approach, and it worked out.
Which is just amazing, because when you think of just how much music is out there, how much content in the world is out there, how many instant choices people have, I mean, it says so much about what they found when they found you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
the trouble can be like, it's a double-sided coin, in I think in the best way possible, because so many people have the ability to make music on their own and put it out into the world on their own. The And that's wonderful, but the hard part is wading through all of the noise and finding those special, dots of light, amidst all of the average Joe who's making a TikTok rap trying to go viral, you know.
Right. You,
Finding the gems out there, that becomes the challenge, I think.
yeah. But you have taken it further. I mean, now there are storylines that we read about, and we keep up with those in the music videos. I was thinking back, like, the opportunities, because a lot of bands don't really take this opportunity to make this whole three-dimensional picture, however you want to call that. Like, I was thinking back to, do you remember Nine Inch Nails when they released Year Zero? Did you keep up with that at all?
Back in the day, I wasn't a big Nine Inch Nails fan. I've come to appreciate their work and Trent Reznor's work a lot more as I've gotten older, and kind of hindsight being 2020. Like, I'm a big fan of his work now.
Yeah.
But, my inspiration, when it comes to things like fictional storylines and concept records, was like the Beatles, Sergeant Pepper, and what I discovered when I was like 15, 16 years old. And then Ziggy Stardust later in life,
Mhm.
and finding artists who would create these fictional worlds as a way of presenting their music where they may be singing about very real things. They've just added this sort of extra layer of entertainment, and that's there for the people that care to dive into it. And so we just wanted to do something similar, let the music be able to stand on its own, but have this other thing that you're invited to dive into if you care to.
Yeah. But the opportunity that you all have, I mean, you've, I think, already been able to take it even further than the Beatles or Bowie have, just circumstance of eras right there. You had the album and whatever was written about it, and then maybe you had the live show, certainly not with the Beatles. They did the movie, but Bowie, you not so far able to take this on the road yet. Do you work the storyline into the live show? Do you anticipate being able to do that?
You know, ideas are often constrained by budgetary limitations. So, in my head, I've got this stadium-sized set pieces and light shows and lasers and all sorts of stuff. But once I see the budget on paper, that sort of dictates what your vision gets to look like. So if touring becomes a thing again one day, and we get that piece of paper that's got that number on it, that'll definitely be a determining factor.
Yeah. Well, it is seeing where you could take this and everything. I mean, graphic novels, whatever. Like, I would love to see.
Which is a thing we're talking about, actually.
Oh,
It's
really?
come up more than once because I'm a comic book fan. But I'm not a comic book writer. So we've been talking to a few different people at DC, just very casually so far, to see if it's something that we could maybe pursue in lieu of touring, some sort of other creative project to keep us our minds occupied.
Yeah. Well, that'd be cool. I'd love to see that. I really would. I want to ask about some of the tracks on here too. You get really early on, Nobody Likes the Opening Band, which I know it's been around for a few years, finally makes this record here. And it's just this, like the first time I heard it though was on the album,
Mm.
like I hadn't heard of it, like in hearing it, it's just, if you've been in music long enough, you know everything that you're talking about. And it becomes the perfect opening song too. Like, did you like intentionally write this as an opening song?
I did, and I didn't put it first on the record because I think people were expecting to. So I just can't stand doing what's expected of me. So for better or for worse, I put it later in the playlist. And I think that bummed a lot of people out, but I don't care. I can't help myself. But yeah, I wrote that song in about 30 minutes on the way to one of our early shows. We had an opening spot, and on the way down there, I just kind of wrote this little tune. And when I got to the show, I was like, "Look, Ryan, before we start our first song, I have this little thing that I want to do on the other side of the curtain. When you hear me sing this last note, that's when we'll start our first song." And he's like, "Dude, what are you talking about?" but he trusted me and he let me go out there and do it, and it's become a staple. So whenever we open a show, it's the first song that we play. If we're headlining a show, we won't play it unless we talk to the openers beforehand, and we'll say, "Look, we have this song," and it's not about disparaging anyone, it's about giving new things a chance. That's sort of the heart of it. But if the openers weren't cool with it, we won't play it. But luckily, everyone has always understood like the conceit behind it, and sometimes we'll even invite the singer from the opening band up on stage to sing an additional verse called "Nobody Likes the Headlining Band," and that's always really fun.
That's great. I mean, I don't know how often you've done it. You've said, when you're headline or when you're opening or whatever, at this point, you open with it too. Do you find that it's grabbing the attention of that audience a little bit quicker?
Yeah, it's a little bit jarring, I think, because oftentimes what we'll do at Acapella, just sort of a stomp and snap thing, take the stage and just start doing that, and everyone in the room is like, "What is going on? Is this guy testing the microphones or something?" But people start singing, and just like, address the elephant in the room. We know that you're not here to see us, but if you give us a chance, you might just like it. And it's always gone over really well.
Yeah. It just goes to prove like there is an enormous amount of theatricality with everything that you do, especially within your music, though. I mean, you hear it in these songs. That song, it's got plenty of others throughout the record. Where does that come from for you? Does that come from any specific spots in your songwriting?
It's probably an amalgamation from a bunch of different places. filtered through the lens of rock and roll. Yeah, I was never a theater kid, but there's certainly been musicals that I've had an affinity for, like Little Shop of Horrors. Growing up, I was a big fan of that. The kind of musicals that are a little bit left of center. They're not necessarily like
Mhm.
that musical, But other sort of theatrics that I've become accustomed to were, filtered through the lens of like Queen or from like David Bowie or any number of rock and roll artists that sort of married that into their live show. I've been a fan of, that kind of performance. So I try to do it my own way when,
Yeah.
shows are a thing.
Well, I'll tell you, when I get down to From the Gallows on the record, I'm I think I clapped. I like actually clapped because you brought something back very popular in the 50s, early 60s, and that was the spoken word bridge, which we do around my house as a joke all the time, where my wife will say something and I'll just look at her and say, "Baby," and then I'll just repeat everything that she just said.
That's how they start. Baby or darling.
Baby or darling, that's it.
But that one actually goes back to the 30s. I was a huge fan, I still am a huge fan of this jazz group called the Ink Spots.
Mhm.
I don't want to set the world on fire.
Great song. Yep.
They had this formula for writing songs, and every one of their songs followed that formula. So me writing From the Gallows was sort of taking the Ink Spots formula and turning it into like a Lawrence Welk song on acid, and it ended up being one of my favorite tracks on the record. It was so fun to
Yeah.
make.
I don't know anybody. I can tell you for certain. I've never been in an interview where the ink spots has been invoked, and I really, really appreciate that right there.
They've had a sort of resurfacing because I think one or two of their songs are featured on some video games now. I'm not a big gamer.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't tell you the names of them, but more fans have recognized that Ink Spot's influence with that song than I ever thought would before. But I guess it's because it's like video games, which is great. I think all of that really old jazz stuff needs to be appreciated on a bigger level.
Yeah. I'm sitting right by a stack of 78s over here. I'm gonna have to. I'd say dust off, but I think that dust is embedded in them forever. You can't get that stuff out at this point.
You have to add the dust now.
um, I am curious. It was alluded to a little bit ago. Previous bands don't want to rest on the laurels of that. What do they play any role in either of your lives at this point?
Previous bands, no. We were both really fortunate to be employed as musicians in any kind of capacity. If you're a musician and you have a job where you have a regular paycheck you can count on, and that's it. You've made it. It's a wonderful opportunity to have. So it was a difficult thing to walk away from, but we just both got to a point where we felt like betting on ourselves and making the kind of music that we wanted to make rather than make other people's music, which can be a challenge of its own. But finally having an opportunity to just go from here to finished product with nothing standing in between it to water it down or change the meaning or anything like that, it's something that we had to do, I think.
Yeah, I think I remember an interview that you were talking about recently, where you said you had to kind of shake that off of you at one point when you started writing these songs. That's really interesting to me too. Like how, like what did that mean actually when you were talking? Because as you're saying, when you wrote for Panic, there was a lot of stuff in between beyond just you writing the song and it releasing. Like, what did that mean for you as a songwriter to have to adjust?
Well, I think also when you're writing for another artist, you have to keep their world in mind and their brand, their past, things they've done before. So you're writing from not necessarily your own point of view, but you're trying to incorporate their point of view into your writing, which is its own challenge. So I did that for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So it kind of took me a minute to remember how to write for myself, how to be myself on stage, how to be a frontman, things like that. So playing in secret, I think, served another purpose. It allowed us to sort of find those roles again without all of the iPhones recording every misstep that we may have had along the way.
Yeah, I didn't actually consider that, and that's really obvious too. I mean, being able, coming from very, other famous bands and everything, there's no anonymity, right? And so you would be progressing in real time in front of everyone, and that is really interesting.
Exactly. And it was, nothing is instantaneous when you take on something new. There's a learning curve. So we had to learn how to play as a two-piece and how to put on a show that's entertaining with just two people. So it wasn't all, here we are and the curtain goes up and I don't know how all of a sudden, we had to find out what this thing is bit by bit, and night by night playing in front of strangers to see if the music that we were making could get people's attention on its own, without us waving some big banner that says, "Hey, formerly of," over here.
Right.
We didn't want to do that.
Right.
So I think doing it in secret that way provided us with an opportunity to sort of find ourselves again.
Yeah. So what comes next then? I mean, obviously, I think people are looking forward to shows, and it sounds like maybe that's going to happen towards the end of this year. But are there more music plans that you've got rolling?
I mean, we're collecting ideas and like you said, trying our best to not rest on our laurels. And we've certainly got more than enough for another record, but it's super early stages right now. When I say like we have more than enough another record, I'm like little tiny bits and pieces of song ideas that we really like. We just need to make them into songs instead of jingles, so it's super early stages, but it is fun, and we're rolling pretty good, working on this new stuff. So.
Well, it's absolutely impressive what you've pulled off already. This record is so much fun to listen to. I know that there's some heavy subjects going on. I know it's a deep, dark record in one side of things, but it's such a fun record to put on and dance around to. I can't thank you enough for making it.
Well, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for talking about it too. Hopefully we'll see you sooner than later.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
No problem, Gabe.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, man. Take care. Bye.